The reason a lot of Klan members like Donald Trump is because a lot of what he believes, we believe in. Donald Trump would be best for the job.
For president.
Yeah.
I am a farmer and white nationalist. Support Donald Trump.
Sending out all the illegals, building a wall, and a moratorium on Islamic immigration. That's very appealing to a lot of ordinary white people.
Voting against Donald Trump at this point is really treason to your heritage.
Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists?
I don't know anything about white supremacists, so I don't know.
Trump named Steve Bannon as his new campaign CEO. Mr. Bannon is best known for his controversial Breitbart News,
a campaign chair that ran a website that has become a field day for the alt-right, which is racist and all sorts of other ists.
The alt-right, which is the sort of dressed up in suits version of the neo-Nazi and white supremacist movements.
A lot of what he believes, we believe in. The reason a lot of Klan members like
Well, here we are, the Concerned Forum. 3 o'clock, Saturday, and it's time to get it on. It's also time to learn. Now, that video that you just saw, first of all, I can tell you, those are not the sentiments that I share. But I wanted people to get a good look at what's going on this election time. Now, I have a marvelous guest here, a great friend of mine. But before we get into that, I have one thing I want to get off of my chest. And that's this. Here in New York City, especially here in New York City, I want to see people get excited. I want to see people participate. I want people to understand this is the most important election in our lifetime. And yeah, I know. You know, politicians are always saying that, okay? Every election year, especially presidential elections. But unfortunately, this time it's true. Kind of like the situation with the boy that used to call Wolf all the time. And I don't want to see what happened to him happen to our country. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is real. This is not a joke. This is not some kind of political ploy. This is not about Democrats trying to raise a fear factor. Saying, oh, watch out for these nasty Republicans. If you elect them, they're going to take away Social Security. And they're also going to destroy the environment. Now, first of all, unfortunately with the Republicans over the last 40 years, that is true. But what the hell, we fight about that every 4 years. And yeah, for the most part, the Republican Party is definitely out to end Social Security as we know it. But reasonable people can agree to disagree about what form the safety net can take. But what we have now is a gentleman, Donald Trump, that is indeed truly heinous to everything that America has been striving towards. I will tell you that the Trump machine is basically striving to tear down everything that this country has been fighting to stand for since the Civil War. We've had a lot of problems in this country. And let's face it, race is the big banana. But slowly but surely, we fight, we get beaten, and progressives rally and fight again. And the tide of history goes forward. You constantly have people fighting to pull us backwards, but we managed to go forward. The case of this guy, Trump, is a case where you have the Dark Ages trying to reach out and pull us back. And we can't let that happen. Too many people have died. Too many people have had their lives ruined by the kind of bigotry and idiotic pronouncements that this clown makes. As somebody said in the, as the Daily News said in its editorial yesterday, he is a malignancy upon the American body politic. And if we just sit around and take this as another case of politics as usual, we will be condemning ourselves to God knows what horrors of America that we will be putting ourselves in the 21st century. Now, this is a guy that says to a Muslim family that their son's sacrifice doesn't mean doodly squat. This man risked his life to save 10 of his platoon members. And I really respected and appreciated, being a partially disabled veteran myself, I respected and appreciate and empathize with the late captain's mother and father when they came on that stage at the Democratic Convention. And what they literally did, they challenged Donald Trump. And see, here goes the thing. Trump had left himself wide open for that. Previous to that incident, he had been making these anti-Islamic people statements. No, we don't want them in the country, etc. They're all terrorists, etc. So when this family had a chance to get on TV, they took up the challenge. And naturally, Donald Trump, as he always seems to do, when you stand up to a bully, he whines. Well, that's what he did about the Khan family. Because what Mr. Khan said was exactly 100% correct. Have you ever read the Constitution, Mr. Trump? Have you ever sacrificed for this country, Mr. Trump? And I do believe that the answer to both of those is no. And one more point I want to make on this particular subject. Trump claims that he wants to reach out to black and Latino leaders. Well, quite frankly, at this stage of the game, any leader of color that would sit down and try and have a meeting with Donald Trump, well, as far as I'm concerned, because I don't pretend to speak for anyone else, but as far as I'm concerned, they're not a leader. I have seen lately where some of these ultra-conservative types have actually gotten black people to sit up there and spout all kinds of, I don't know what you call it, sweet nonsense about Trump. And I find that sad. I think it pertains to what kind of person you are. But to see a few, and let's face it, there are a few black men and women sitting up there, basically acting, and they had a preacher on there the other day. And I'm trying to figure out where the hell this guy is coming from. A black man sitting up there talking about, to me, it seemed like he was saying, oh, well, the Democrats are just trying to rip him down for political reasons. No, it's not about political reasons. The only thing political about it is the fact that the guy is running for public office. That's the only thing that makes it political. This is a guy that was found by the Justice Department, Nixon's Justice Department, to have willfully discriminated against people of color, against black and Latino people, from renting his properties, from renting apartments, because they did not want people of color living in his buildings. Okay, don't tell me it's about politics, all right? The Justice Department said that, not me, not the Democratic Party. This is the guy that if we had lived in a slightly different time, he would have helped to railroad 5 black and Latino young men to the death house at Sing Sing for the Central Park attacking and raping of a young white female jogger. And then, after the boys have given up their young life in prison, the city compensates these gentlemen, which you can never compensate people for time. I spent quite a few years in the military, and I know you cannot compensate for time. They gave the big gentleman $41 million. Trump raises all kinds of hell, saying, oh, well, they shouldn't have gotten anything. They were guilty. Hello, Mr. Trump, they were proven to be innocent. But yet he doesn't see that. And then, of course, he takes the time to have the first black president. He says, this guy is not even a real American. He's from Kenya. The idea of any person of color supporting Donald Trump is as nutty as a Jewish person supporting, no, I'm not going to say Hitler, but that gentleman that the Mossad was able to kidnap and bring back to Israel to stand trial. What's his name? Eichmann. Yes, Eichmann. The mastermind of the final solution. I don't think you would find Jewish leaders sitting down having a nice conversation with Eichmann, and quite right. And I think that black people, especially, need to develop the same type of self-respect that the Jewish people would have. And I respect them for the fact that they don't stand up, no matter what their political persuasion, whether they be left-wing, conservative, middle of the road. They're not going to stand up and see themselves threatened as a people here in America. And I believe that black people need to develop that same type of backbone. We need to remind Mr. Trump and a lot of his followers, because they're out there. Remember, Donald Trump is just a symbol and a symptom of the disease that we have in this country. But we need to remind people, and this is where real leadership comes in. We're not standing around with our hand out begging. We built this country. This country was built on the backs of people of color. And we need to remind people about that. Yeah, I know about all the rugged pioneers and all the good stuff. And that's a true part of the American story. But you have to remember something. The wealth of this country, the fact that this country, going into the 20th century, became a world power, that was due primarily to the labor that was gotten from African American backs. The White House, the Congress, all those buildings were built by black people, enslaved black people. And pay no attention to that foolish Mr. O'Reilly over there at that network Fox, when he talks about, what did he say? They were well fed. You know, I don't even know how to answer that type of stupidity. But yeah, primarily we built this country. Put it this way. The start that became America because of us. Long before Mr. Trump and his ancestors thought about coming over here. So my admonition to leaders of color, stop begging. And also, most of the area that we're talking about when Trump cries about so-called illegal immigrants, that was their territory, had been their area for thousands of years, until America stole it through the Mexican-American War. But of course, Mr. Trump like many of his followers, are so ignorant they probably don't even know about the Mexican-American War and how it was motivated by the slave-holding South to gain more territory for slavery. So Americans need to think about that. They need to study their history and understand where they came from and why things turned out the way that they did. Now, I want to give the opportunity here to Mr. David Straham, a very good friend of mine, an activist, an educator, a servant of his country in the military. Because another subject that really gets my craw, aside from when I see black people running around calling themselves conservatives, is this issue about charter schools, which is nothing but an attempt to privatize education in this country and to destroy unions. But I don't want, I shouldn't basically take another man's horn. So, Mr. Straham, could you tell us, Brother David, what do you see about the dangers of charter schools?
Well, charter schools are private schools. Some of the charter schools try to say they're public schools, but they're not. They're publicly funded with taxpayer dollars, but they're privately controlled by private entities. So they're not public schools. They have different rules. They have a situation where they have so-called lotteries, which, you could easily manipulate and get the cream off the top of the students that are available, as well as once you get your students in the fall, you're able to not take any more students for the rest of the term. Now, public schools can't do that for the most part. If someone comes in from Edapina, Mississippi in the middle of October or so, a local public school has to make room for that person and take them in. And in the case of the charter school, they don't have to worry about that because their student population is set. In many cases, if they get children in the beginning of the term and they find that some of these children are problematic, they have ways of encouraging the parents to take them out and put them in the public school. The point is this: under a situation that we have in this country right now, we have the ruling class, the oligarchy that runs the country. We have the condition of neoliberalism that is telling the government, the ruling class runs the government. The people, some of them think they do, but they don't, that you're going to privatize everything that is possible. You're going to privatize the prisons, for example. Imagine having a situation where prisons are privatized, as we do now. Everything that is public, if there's a way to do it, you're going to turn it into private. And in terms of the schools, don't forget that schools are a tremendous sector of in this country. The money involved in public schools is tremendous. So the ruling class, the capitalist class that runs the place, they would like to get their hands on that money. Now, the idea is that you make the schools, the public schools, look bad. And that is the technique that one uses when one is going to destroy or exploit a group. You demonize it. So one of the strategies is to demonize teachers, talk about bad teachers, talk about bad schools, talk about failing schools. All of these things, this is the language of those who want to take over when they think about public schools, wanting to turn public schools into profit-making, in many cases, charter schools. You demonize someone when you want to destroy them. And it's the same thing in warfare.
Right.
So the point is that what they have to do is attack the teachers and talk about bad teachers to the point where you can get rid of these teachers and close down public schools and turn them into charter schools, and if possible, just lay off those teachers in the public schools that usually have union benefits and better working contracts than one would have in a private situation. So you attack these people and you keep up the attack. You tie in all the politicians involved in the legislative branch, the executive branch, and get them to get on board with attacking teachers and schools and putting in charter schools. You know, you put it in the code that you could have these certain number of charter schools, and you do it by inch. Every year you try to add the number of charter schools that is available. So it's a very bad situation, not only in schools, but in all other aspects of things in America. They would like to get rid of the post office and put in Staples and FedEx and UPS if they could. They made it very problematic for the post office to be viable in terms of money and everything, administrative things, courts, everything that you can turn into private profit under the system of neoliberalism, you do. And that's what's going on all over the country. All over the country, things are being privatized for private profit.
I think that that's one of the things, because I had State Senator Perkins on this program a while back, and he is a very strong fighter for public education. And, you know, people always talk about the founding fathers. Well, I tell you, especially those that want to try and talk about, well, I'm a conservative. Well, most of the founding fathers, I got some big problems with. I'm a black man, and any black person should have a problem with the founding fathers. But just because I have that big problem with them, and of course, I mean, I really don't even have to say this to you, but to the audience out there, the big problem as a black man that I have with the founding fathers is the fact that they did not feel me worthy enough to be looked upon as a free citizen, number one. Number two, what they worked out in many colonies that became states was the fact about the property requirements to be able to vote, which affected most white men in the country at that time. Not to neglect the fact that they also did not allow women the right to vote. So yeah, that's my big problem with the founders. However, in most of their ideas about government, especially Jefferson, he has a lot of ideas in terms of government that I really like. For example, He believes that the wealthy should not be allowed, as the Republican Party always fights for, to pass on a whole lot of inherited wealth. I definitely don't believe in that, more or less in the same reason that Jefferson didn't believe in that, because he was trying to cut down the perpetual wealthy class that would make and motivate, make laws just for the benefits of their wealthy class. Now, this ain't me. This is TJ. This is Thomas Jefferson. Another thing that he was adamant about was public education. Why? Because Jefferson says that the best defense for a true elected democracy is an educated public. And look what we have now. Donald Trump did not just drop out of the sky. Donald Trump is a result of the American people being uneducated. A large amount, hopefully not the majority, but an extremely large amount of the American people, excuse me, I forgot to turn off my phone, but as I was saying, a huge amount of people in this country, too huge, are not educated. And because of that, they make decisions that are against their own best interest. And that has been the biggest problem that we've had in this country in terms of how we govern ourselves, or excuse me, how we allow ourselves to be governed. Now, you made the comment about private prisons. Private prisons are one of the most disgraceful things that we have going on in this country. Now, we basically, for the most part, we have gotten rid of that here in New York State. But in many states, especially in the Southwest and in the West, although Congress, I think they passed a law cutting down or cutting out private prisons for federal crimes, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can, I'd appreciate if somebody could, give me a call on that if I'm mistaken. But they have cut down, either cut down or cut out the use of private prisons on the federal level. On the state level, they're just, they're working towards it. Reason being, because private prisons, for the most part, they're an animal house. People are being locked up just so they can have people in their institution so they can get money from the government. And that's wrong, because what you're doing then, you're not fighting crime. What you're doing is you're waging war on poor people. That was the situation where they had the riots in Ferguson, Missouri. But of course, conservatives don't see that. They see that as just a simple case of disrespect towards law and order. But that wasn't the case at all. And Brother David, as far as what you were saying about the whole charter school thing, I got another article here I was shuffling to. Right now, we have a record high for homelessness. And how does that feed into the equation that you're speaking of?
Well, I'm not that big a fan of the founders.
I know.
You see, because the founders were involved in a slave society where they went and got kidnapped people from Africa and brought them over here and enslaved them by torture and imprisonment to do the work. And wealth is created by people working on the resources, working on the land. So these enslaved people made these people wealthy. Also, I would say democracy is not something that the original founders of the United States were too much interested in. There was no democracy for women. There was no democracy for Africans or indigenous people. And these people were also afraid of, when they broke away, as have been brought out in some recent books, of the British monarchy possibly doing away with slavery. So that's another reason for the revolt here by those who rule. The point is that there's no love for democracy here. We don't have really democracy. We have a oligarchy that runs things, and it lets people think they are in a democracy when they're living in an actual oligarchy. The only way this stuff can continue, this type of governance continue, is that we have such a varied demographic situation here that you can put people against each other. It's the old stratagem of divide and conquer. You just divide people up, you give some more privileges than the other, and you have them fighting against yourself. That is why in this country right now, you can have 1/10 of 1% of those people at the commanding heights, on the Everest of the political world, running the whole place. So you have a election going on right now, leading up to the presidency, with two people in capitalist parties. They're both capitalist parties. What are the people doing being involved in capitalist parties? People need to have parties of their own. There's no hope in having things done right when the people in the same party run by the oligarchs who are over them. That is why in the richest place in the world, on the earth, the United States has nearly half its people poor or near poor. This is no accident. This is the nature of the system. So Republican or Democrat, as far as I'm concerned, they're in the same league, and they have the same goals, which is to enrich those who rule. The people have to realize the nature of this capital economic system we have, capitalist economic system, is to make profit for the people who run the system. That's it. You got to be lazy on this. There's only one purpose: to make profit for the people who run the capitalist system, and that's it. All other things are done to maintain a semblance of order and to not have a revolt. And they will only give up something when it looks like there's going to be a revolt, just as it was in the Great Depression, when Roosevelt was in there. Those things are given up: Social Security and unemployment insurance and things, and WPA. Those things were given up because it looked like there might be a revolt. So that's the only way that you're going to get anything to these people. People have to separate themselves completely from the Democrats and Republicans. That's the only way that we're going to get anywhere. We got to stop voting for Republicans, stop voting for Democrats, and the people need to have their own party and organize at a lower level, at the local and state level at first, and go on with that. In the black community, you have people who are touting the the value of the Democrats over the Republicans, and these people haven't got one thing that they're asking for. They're taken for granted. Trump is right about that. They're taken for granted. They have nothing they're asking for, and they just support what they think is not Trump. So, you know, that's what you have with the big amount of people, large amount of people supporting the Democratic Party.
Now, and as you folks know, or should know, realize by now, that on my show, I practice true democracy. And I try many times to find people that I'm not in agreement with, or that are not in complete, I might be somewhat in disagreement with. And this is one of these shows. I consider Brother David to be like a second father to me. But on this one subject, this is where we disagree. I believe that right now, at this point, what's the day? August 28th.
August 27th.
August 27th. So I forgot to turn off my cell phone, and I forgot what day it is. I've been in a hurry all day, folks. But on this day, August 27th, 2016, the millennia is not here, okay? The Jubilee is not here. We are stuck right now in this country, on this planet, with what we have. And I'm in a kind of a unique position because much more than the average American, I've had a certain amount of experience on the inside of government. I worked on Capitol Hill while I was in the Navy, in my off-duty time. And my on-duty time, I was an intelligence technician for the Defense Intelligence Agency. And as you can imagine, that position, which also gave me access to out there to Langley, to the CIA headquarters, to Maryland, NSA. I have a fairly good idea. I would never say I was an expert. Even if I had a PhD in the subject, I would never say I was an expert. I don't believe in experts. But I will say that I have more experience than the average American on what the possible ramifications of certain actions would be. And because of that, I will honestly say the thought of Donald Trump in the White House has cost me sleep since the beginning of this year. The reason being, number one, because I know the type of people that follow Mr. Trump. I know him very well. See, one of the unfortunate things, and it's very good that you, one thing we share, and that is, one of the things that we share, among many things, but one of the things that in particular that we share is a distrust of this idea that privatization is a good thing. No, it is not a good thing. Privatization is good only when it's about you, your individual self, your home, your property, okay? That's where privatization should stop. The idea of things that are necessary for all of us being privatized, transportation, education, the water that we drink.
The power.
Right, the power. I'm having a fight right now with the cable company because I marvel at some of these various companies and also these cell phone companies and the rates that they charge, quite frankly. But I was in the military, and I say this again because I think that that's a very important point to bring up. Because right now, we have a country that's involved in many places around the world. Quite frankly, places where I don't believe that we should be about. I'm in disagreement with many folks in the upper echelon of the Democratic Party because I don't believe that all these incursions, all these occupations by American forces are necessary. However, I think one of the great mistakes that was made by the left during the 70s and 60s and 70s was the demobilization of the draft. Because one of the great things about the draft was that, at least in the military in general, it gave people a chance to have connection with other parts, people from other parts of the country. Now you have a situation where less than 1% of the American public has anything to do with the military. If they don't have a relative or a friend that's serving. They've never served themselves. They have no idea, what the military is about. And they have no idea about what people from various parts of the country are about. Back then, in the 90s, back in the 70s and 60s, before they shut down the draft, you had people from a cross-section. You ran across a cross-section of people. And I had that experience. I served with people who were the members of the KKK.
There's a good reason for that.
What do you say the reason is, Dave?
The reason for that, the ruling class would not like to have the draft. Because if you draft people and you're running an empire, and this is an empire, the United States is empire. If you draft people, you're going to get some resistance to these forays throughout the world.
Right.
So that's the reason these people in the military-industrial complex do not want to draft. They want to go and get the people who have no jobs, who are poor, who have nowhere to go and join the Army, the Air Force, Marine Corps, and whatnot. So the masses of people who are at the bottom of the economic pecking order, those are the places where they go and recruit the people that they're going to put in the military. So you have the military going to all the public schools, where you have essentially poor children going to and recruiting them.
That needs to stop.
In the that's going on right now.
That needs to stop.
And even signing them up while they're in school.
Yeah, that needs to
So they're
stop.
not going to the elite schools. They're not going to Hotchkiss School. They're not going to Taft School and trying to recruit people to be privates in the Army. They're not doing that.
Yeah.
They're going to where they can get some poor folks and sign them up and get them as good cannon fodder for the American empire. All over the world, the United States has bases. They're going and making forays into every part of the world, and this is an empire, and the government wants to maintain hegemony throughout the world. And that is harder if you have a draft.
Now,
so
David,
that's why they don't want a draft.
Now, here we go again. That's another point that him and I are in complete agreement. And that's something else that the Concerned Forum will be working on starting right after this election. But see, the point that I'm making is that I know who are Trump supporters. I know these people. That guy, what's his name, Bannon, that has now become Trump's campaign manager. This guy is the editor for Breitbart. Breitbart is the main mouthpiece of what they call the new alt-right, the alternative right. The young lady that, you might not know about this, about Dave, but the young lady, the tall black lady, she does some car commercials, and she's the lead person in the movie Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters that's come out. The tall, I call her very tall, very statuesque African-American sister. She's beautiful. But she has been attacked unmercifully by people on Trump's staff, Breitbart, his magazine. And see, these are the type of people that Trump has surrounded himself with. That's why I say any black or Latino person that wants to talk about their leadership and they're sitting down with Donald Trump, they are no leader. They are various words. I'm not going to get into a lot of them, but you know, how do you describe a Quisling? People need to look that up. Who Quisling was? Vichy, okay? These are famous people that betrayed their country to the fascists. And that's what any leader of color, any black or Latino leader that sits down and speaks of Donald Trump, that's what they're doing. And this guy Breitbart, he is the focal point for all this new hate. Well, having been in the military, having been where I've been, not just at sea, but in the bowels of the Pentagon, the idea of these type of people controlling our military complex, the ramifications are too scary to even think about. And that's why, in this particular election, I am in total agreement with what a journalist said the other night on the news. This is not a typical election. These are extremely dangerous times. You're talking about people right now, as we speak, are being beaten. Black and Latino children in many parts of the country, not here in New York, because in New York, unfortunately, too many of us have become jaded and self-centered. But you go out in the rest of the country, in America, there are people right now being pressured, being bullied, being frightened by these people that support Donald Trump, especially children of color. A lady who was a public school teacher and then the union organizer among teachers. I forgot what state she was from, Texas or Arizona, one of those states out west. And she was talking about how she is seeing black and especially Latino kids being bullied and are so frightened they can hardly talk. Yeah, Donald Trump is going to get you and throw you out of the country. They're going to drag your mom and dad out of the country. Okay? No, this man should not be in the White House. He should be nowhere near the White House.
Well,
and we have to stand up against that.
I got to step in here.
Go right for it.
I'm not concerned with the rhetoric of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. That's just rhetorical stuff in an election campaign. The Democrats and Republicans, you're talking about the same people. Now, Donald Trump has his technique that he's doing to raise support among certain groups. However, Hillary Clinton is no answer to this. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have done tremendous damage in the black community. Their passage of laws that have loaded up the jails with black and brown people. They are cutting back on things that benefited black people, like the change in the welfare programs of the started in the 30s. People have to realize that the rich and powerful, the corporations, that the people at the commanding heights, all of them on subsidies. All these companies are on subsidies. the welfare cheats are the rich people, are the people in the capitalist class who are getting a wealth of subsidies all over the country. People have to wake up to what's really going on. People have to wake up to what benefits people have in other countries and think about what we could have here if we had a change and got rid of the Democrats and the Republicans. They're both no good.
Now, you made that point, and I would say that I agree to a large extent with much of what you say. I agree 100% that in this country, in this Western country, we give far too much to the corporate machine. I don't believe that any lower class, or I don't want to use that term, but I don't believe that any person, any working class person, as far as I'm concerned, it's almost impossible for them to be a welfare cheat. I went to Catholic school for most of my education, and I was taught by the monks there and by the nuns that poor people have a right to survive. And essentially, that's all people are trying to do. And one of the sad things, and this has been done, you got a little bit backwards though. The stigmatization of poor people, that has primarily been done by the Republican Party. Now, the problem is that the Democrats, in many cases, and I've said this before, have been very slow, very cowardly in standing up and fighting for people that need those services. And I would agree with anyone, because that's the fact. That's why we have the worst social safety net out of all the all the Western countries. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people in the black community, especially men, they made a thing about Hillary and some statements that were made in the 90s. Now, I'm going to take that, okay? I'm going to take that on. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when I came out of the Navy, we moved up to Baltimore. And I was the secretary for the Baltimore NAACP's Committee on Crime and Youth. Okay, so I lived right where you saw all the rioting in Baltimore. That's where I lived with my wife and my son. We lived there. And I'll tell you quite frankly, it was a nightmare. On top of that, my son from my first wife, my firstborn son, was living in Richmond. And this was when Richmond was the murder capital of the world. I don't know if you know that or not, but for a period in the 80s and 90s, Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the old Confederacy, had won the dubious distinction of being the murder capital of the Western world. And what happened, the Clintons were catching pressure from both sides. They were catching pressure from the conservatives like Newt Gingrich to cut down on the social safety net, because Newt was constantly crying about black and Latino women having babies and getting a welfare at the taxpayers' expense. He didn't talk about these corporations gouging the American people for billions, okay? For their, tax, where they don't pay any taxes. Didn't say a word about that. Now,
I want to say something at this point.
Hold on a second, because this affects me personally. Now, things were so bad and the pressure was so intense that Hillary did say some things which I take exception to. But I understand the reason why it was said. I understand the pressure that she was under, because you did have predators, unfortunately, in the city. And it was a lot of black preachers, a lot of black pastors that put pressure on the Clintons and said, why are you not coming in the black community and putting people in jail where they belong? I lost my firstborn son to that type of violence. I lost my firstborn son. He wasn't ready. He was getting ready to turn 16. And he was down there with my first wife in Richmond. And unfortunately, he got involved in that lifestyle. And they took his life.
The answer to this is not locking up people of color, as Clinton, male and female, have done.
I agree.
That is the answer.
I agree
the
with
reason
that to a point.
The reason that people are poor here, and we have half the people that are poor and they're poor, is because those in charge, those who run the place, those who are at the commanding heights, the business people, the finance people, the real estate people, the manufacturers who have taken jobs out of the country, they want it that way. They want to have poor people, and they like it that way. So that's why you have poor people. There needs not be any poor people living here if things will run right economically. Capitalism is a failing system. You have to do something else.
I think that you're right. All right? I think I agree with you to a large extent. But I also, having been inside the hurricane and seeing what it does to people, and also looking at the, what do you call it, the psychology, how people live amongst each other, there has, unfortunately, over the last 50 years, there has been a very sick pathology that has developed within the black and brown community. The pathology of the streets. Because I have seen educated, intelligent young black and brown men put themselves in that pathology. All these kids doing the shooting and the gang banging, all these young black and Latino men, okay, they are all not poor, ignorant kids. There's a pathology out there that we also have to deal with. We have to be able to deal with both of these problems at the same time. And on that note,
the pathology is in the ruling class that runs this place.
We are down now to our last 10 seconds, so let me say that this has been an extremely interesting conversation. There will be more to come. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. This was good. This was friggin' good. This was good. And it was wonderful because I think that we said things that people need to understand, that they need to hear. And that's part of the problem.
That's right.
You know, that's part of the problem. And you know what? I'm going to send this. This is going out. This is definitely going out because I'm going to send it to my Democratic Club. I'm going to send it to all of these office holders. I'm going to send it to de Blasio because I busted my ass to help get that guy elected. And I am disappointed that he does not stand up. And I don't like to say stand up to the police department because it's not about standing up to the cops. The cops are there for our benefit. They are there for our protection. So for activists to say that, you know, de Blasio is not standing up to the police, I don't like the construction of that sentence because you always have to have some type of crime control. But what I am disappointed in is the things that every government needs, every part of government has to have. Openness, transparency. I want those folks to be accountable. just like every other part of government.
Right.
Man, when you going to get out in the street, brother? And start with more book tours and speaking engagements?
Yes, I'm thinking about it. I'm just thinking about it.
Damn, you're excellent. And if anybody else is listening, I like having you on this program because you make me better. I really mean that.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank
right.
you. Now, hold on a second. Let me get this one off.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come over there and take care of yours.
Okay.
Okay, come on, think it off. I'm going to see next time if I can get the one that... No, but you can't use the table mic because that means you'd have to lean over.
Yeah.
That's okay. You good.
I can't use it because...
Right, because your leg.
Yeah, my leg.
Okay. Over here. Let's move this out a little bit. Let me come around. And okay, this is here. Okay. Let me get your thing.
Okay. I got 20 minutes.
Yep. I told you to be on time. Oh, no, I'm not going to that. Okay, hold on. Actually, you seem like you're walking better. What are you doing? Some kind of exercise?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Okay, make sure this is open all the way. Okay. I'm gonna leave this right here. Yeah. No, I gotta get you guys.